This week on The Aviators, we go back to before Cessnas had tricycle gear or rear windows, as Curtis shows us his 195. You've seen the banner, now we're taking you inside the busiest control tower in the world. And Curtis shows us one of the most popular ways to visit a fly-in, by camping under the wing. The Cessna 172 is the most produced aircraft in history. With its Land-O-Matic tricycle gear, OmniVision rear window, and a flat opposed four-cylinder engine, the 172 set the mold from which Cessna has continued to base their piston line. But there was a time before the 172, and even before the 150. Before the Citation series and corporate jets. There was a time when Cessnas and business aircraft looked like this.
After World War II, the Cessna Aircraft Corporation was looking for a new type of aircraft to market to a new type of client. What they came up with, the Cessna 195, was something that was revolutionary for the time. It was an aircraft that wasn't designed to train pilots. It wasn't designed to take people flying after work off the grass strip on the farm. It was really designed to take corporate people, business owners, to the factories all across America.
This immaculately maintained 195 was the 33rd of the eventual 1,180 that were built. Curtis is the lucky owner of this 195, which fulfilled a number of the things he and his wife were looking for in an aircraft.
Of course, there's hundreds of aircraft you can choose to buy. We wanted one that we could fly in clouds, fly at IFR. We wanted to be able to take our bikes and camping gear with us. We wanted to be able to travel with it, so we wanted to have a decent speed and decent range. And most importantly to me, I wanted to maintain that connection to antique aircraft because I really enjoy hanging out with those group of people.
While there is a number of modern aircraft that could have met the first few conditions, the requirement for an older aircraft limited the list significantly. But the 195 was able to meet all of Curtis's requirements and is a beautiful antique aircraft.
This aircraft was one of the first single-engine aircraft with a variable pitch prop. This constant speed prop can be adjusted at an angle from the cockpit to help the aircraft get out of short strips as little as 1,500 feet and also give it the ability to cruise at 135 knots, as fast as a DC-3 in its day.
The 190-195 series were the last Cessna models to be equipped with a radial engine. The 195's Jacob engine has 7 cylinders arranged radially around the crankshaft, producing 300 horsepower. After the 195, Cessna and most other aircraft manufacturers moved to newer, more efficient horizontally opposed engines with fewer cylinders.
One of the interesting things about this cowling is these bumps on the outside. These bumps are actually there to make room for the rocker boxes of the engine. That's how tightly cowled it is. This aircraft's not very good at modern airports because it heats up sitting on the ground waiting for clearance to go. It was really designed to take off and land from short, unimproved strips right next to the factory where you were trying to go. Making it suitable for short strips is great big heavy landing gear. The landing gear in this aircraft is designed to operate on rough strips. Since it weighs 3,350 pounds, you can see it's great big beefy gear. And underneath these huge wheel pants are great big 10-inch wheels, which are designed to absorb the bumps and bruises that you might take landing at a grass field. On most aircraft this size, the door actually opens to let the pilot or the co-pilot into their seats. But at this aircraft, it was designed to let the people who are paying for the airplane, the wealthy businessman, into their quarters. The back seat, by all measures, is luxurious. It's wide enough to have 3 seat belts, but very comfortable for 2 people. And there's actually an aisleway between the 2 front seats that the pilots and the co-pilots use to wiggle up to their seats to go fly the airplane. Since cross-country was the mission for this aircraft, it was also important to be able to carry baggage. This baggage door opens up to allow you to carry 200 pounds of baggage. You can disappear for a month with this airplane and carry everything you need.
The most noticeable difference between the 195 and modern Cessna models is the aircraft's landing gear. When Cessna introduced the now familiar tricycle gear design, they marketed it as Land-O-Matic, insinuating that it was such a large improvement over the tail dragger design that the aircraft practically lands itself.
The stance of the 195 is also different than modern Cessnas. The nose of the 195 is actually pointed way up towards the sky, and when it's sitting on its three wheels, it's actually a small wheel way back down here at the tail of the aircraft that supports the weight of the airplane. When you take off or land this aircraft at unimproved strips, those two beefy main wheels and main gear actually support the weight, and it's the pilot's job to balance it on those two wheels.
The 195 is over 60 years old, having been built in 1947. Not all of the components are original, however. The design hasn't changed, but the engine was put on in 2005, and the aircraft's panel was upgraded at that time as well.
GPS and autopilot hadn't been invented in 1947 when this aircraft was built, so this panel's been completely updated with all the most modern avionics. The generator, which originally came with engines in World War II, has been replaced with an alternator, and all the modern instrumentation has been installed. I've got dual GPS navigators in the panel, a complete 2-axis autopilot that will even follow the glide path down to the runway, and all the gyro instruments that you need to fly safely into cloud.
One of the great things about the 195 is that it's an antique aircraft you and up to 4 friends can go somewhere and do something in. Unlike a Warbird, which may only have one seat other than the pilot, the 195 is a true travel aircraft. A big fan of camping with an airplane, Curtis headed to Whitman Regional Airport for AirVenture. There he joined thousands of other pilots who camped out for the event. Between the campers, exhibitors, and airshow performance, more than 10,000 aircraft fly into AirVenture. And for 1 week a year, Whitman's tower is the busiest air traffic control tower in the world.
The Cessna that's over the shore, over the lake, runway 27.
Flight of 6. Make sure you keep that right turn coming around. There's IFR traffic coming in straight in for 27 from over the lake. Keep the right turn.
One up the shoreline.
Face your coming.
Start keeping on the ground.
From 140 feet above the airport, each year a team of FAA controllers take part in what's been called the Super Bowl of air traffic control. Controllers from all over the central United States don their pink shirts for the big game.
The pink shirt is a safety thing. It's kind of a fun color. And it was originally selected just to be different from any other group. When you see a guy in this color pink shirt up here, you know he's a controller.
Wanda Adelman is the ATC manager for the Oshkosh-Fond du Lac area and oversees the FAA tower during AirVenture.
But it really stands out. When you're up in the tower cab, you look out on a sea of 10,000 people, you can pick out exactly where the controllers are because the pink stands out so well. So we tell, in the NOTAM, we tell the pilots to look for the pink shirted controller, and they might be hand signals or wand signals, but they know they're a controller. And we do have a lot of other volunteers, flight line ops, they're all in orange, so the pilots know that the pink shirts are the ones that they need to pay attention to especially.
So, just how many pink-shirted controllers descend on Oshkosh?
64 controllers, and so we have 16 teams of 4. And on each team, there'll be a team leader, and that team leader usually has 5 years experience or more. And then we like to have another veteran controller that at least have 3 years experience. Not all the teams have 2 veteran controllers on them. Some of them will have 2 limiteds and they have 1 or 2 years experience. And every team has a rookie. It's brand new for them, their first year. And the rookies, they're so cute. Their eyes are just wide open looking in it. And they're so excited about being up here. They just really have a really fun time.
Now, all of the controllers are regularly employed FAA flight controllers. When Wanda mentions experience, she means how many years experience they have just at Oshkosh. So let's put this in perspective. When they say this becomes the world's busiest tower, how busy is that really? Well, the busiest airport in the world, Atlanta Hartsfield, averages 2,700 takeoffs and landings a day. At AirVenture, there can be more than 3,000 takeoffs and landings a day. On top of that, there's also the daily air show at Oshkosh, meaning the airport is closed for a few hours a day.
So from 2 o'clock until usually 6 or 6:30, we're not working the airspace at all. It's given to the air boss. And so there's no arrivals and no departures. It's just the performers is all that he's talking to.
So to deal with the large amount of traffic in a safe manner, a number of things are done quite differently at Oshkosh than anywhere else. While the tower may be the most recognizable symbol of air traffic control, the controllers are actually spread out at different sites. In addition to the tower, controllers are also stationed on the field at 2 platforms called MCOWs.
But the MCOWs, it's actually an acronym, and in the FAA we like to do lots of acronyms. It's a Mobile Operation Communication Workstation. It's just kind of silly, but that's what we call them. They're platforms for the controllers to stand on right next to the runway, and they clear the departures from the MCOWs. So the arrivals are cleared from the tower and the departures are cleared from the controllers out on the runway. And then there'll also be a couple controllers right next to the runway that if someone wants to cross rather than depart, that they can clear them to cross.
Usually departures and arrivals are both cleared from the tower. They may be handled by separate controllers, but they're usually both in the control tower.
The other thing that we do really different, it's only an Oshkosh thing, it's called FIST, and that's our VFR approach control. And to controllers, that's an oxymoron. Approach control is radar, but we do it visually, visual flight rules, VFR.
Fisk is a small station set up approximately 7 miles southwest of Oshkosh. From here, the approach controllers visually identify incoming aircraft and direct them to head in one of 2 directions for either runway 927, the east-west runway, or runways 1836 right and left, the north-south runways. Usually an approach controller will work with a radar console and identify aircraft via their registration. A transponder in the aircraft transmitting a unique code lets the controller know where they are by actually appearing on the controller's radar screen. Usually the controller will also have incoming flights displayed on a flight strip, showing a bunch of information including the type of aircraft it is and the aircraft registration or flight number.
All aircraft inbound repping to Fisk. Find an aircraft similar performance to follow.
But at Fisk, there's no radar screen. There's no flight strips. Pilots are asked to effectively turn their transponders off. And aircraft are not identified by their registration.
Thank you very much, Piper. I want you to fly eastbound.
The controllers here use binoculars and their knowledge of aircraft types to identify the aircraft which are inbound from the small town of Ripon. Ripon acts as a mustering point where pilots find aircraft of similar size and speed and then follow them to Fisk. Rather than acknowledging over the radio as they usually would, pilots are instead asked to rock their wings in acknowledgement.
Overhead Fisk, rock your wings. Thank you, Twin Cessna. You're going to be following that lock.
It is kind of freaky to some pilots to not be able to talk to us, but there's just not time. There's just too many pilots, too quick. And I like to tell the story, not last year because of the floods, but the year before. On Friday was our busiest day, and we ran 3,400 operations that day. That's an awful lot to do in 10 hours. So there's not time. I mean, if you come in during a slower time, like real early in the morning, then you can talk to the controllers. And sometimes the controllers will say, go ahead and respond to me. And sometimes they even get pretty chatty when it's real quiet. Especially Ray, if he finds an airplane he really, really likes, it's like, where'd you come from and what year is that? And, when did you get it? And
very cool. About 1.5 miles southwest of Fisk, a BD-4, rock your wings. Very nice BD. Runway 36 today. Roger.
From Fisk, pilots follow one of 2 paths depending on the runway they are assigned. These paths, plus everything else pilots need to know, are outlined in the 30-page notice to airmen that's issued for the event.
And then once they get to the tower, then we just ask them to monitor the tower frequency, and then the tower controller will tell them when to turn base and clear them to land. And then we ask them just to follow the EA flagman and taxi to their parking area. And we do ask them to turn in the grass, and you won't hear any other air traffic controllers tell an aircraft to turn into the grass. But it's rolled really smooth, so there's a few aircraft that won't take the grass. They either have a really small nose wheel, like the Long Easy will not take the grass, so we know that. And some of the really, big warbirds don't want to be in the grass either.
While Whitman is quite a large airport by general aviation standards, with the volume of traffic coming in and out, it becomes very small very quick. The airport's 2 diagonal runways are not used for takeoffs or arrivals during the show. But there are some creative ways that the controllers find to create more space to land aircraft. For instance, what is usually taxiway alpha, which is as wide as most general aviation runways, becomes runway 18 left, 36 right. In addition to this, the controllers use painted dots on runways 9, 27, and 18 right, 36 left.
Oh, the dots on the runway, originally, when I first came here in 02, they just had dots on 927, and they're spaced 1,500 feet apart, and that's helpful for the pilots, but more helpful for the controllers to tell them where to land to ensure that we have 1,500 feet between the two small aircraft. In a normal airport, between two small ones that are landing one behind the other, we're required to have 3,000 feet. But because of the numbers of aircraft we have and all the safety mitigation strategies that we use up here, we ask for and are approved a waiver to use 1,500 feet instead of 3,000. And then we also turn them into the grass just to make sure everybody's safe. So the dots are to help the controllers know where they're going to land and to judge the distance between the two. The blue dot on runway 18, that was originally put on there when we were doing the right base entry to 18, just to help the pilots see where they're going to touch down. We have a displaced threshold, and we want them to stay high on final as they cross 27, so then they hook up with somebody that's departing runway 27. Because pilots always want to land on the end of the runway, and that runway is really long. They can land long and they're fine. So that dot was put there, and then we added the additional dots just to help the controllers judge the distance between the two planes, just to make sure that we're safe.
So essentially, the dots perform two functions. They can help controllers judge the distance between aircraft, and they act like the piano keys at the threshold of a runway would, telling a pilot where their runway begins for their assigned landing point. And with the runways as long as they are, it's possible for the controllers to land two aircraft at the same time on the same runway.
Well, as long as they're 1,500 feet apart, we can put two down at the same time, and it's perfectly legal and perfectly safe. And sometimes we'll have one land on the green dot and one on the orange dot, and then when the one on the green dot, the farther one down the runway, when he touches down, he turns off into the runway. They might tell the second airplane, keep it airborne, now touch down on the green dot. So we keep feeding the runway. But they do occasionally have touch two down on the runway at the same time. Perfectly legal, perfectly safe.
Now, none of these procedures were developed overnight. The FAA has been providing tower service for EAA's fly-in since the 60s. Accidents do and will happen, but they are the exception. Everything the 64 controllers do is to try and avoid an incident.
The only problems that we have if somebody just does something silly like cut it too short, pilot things, but we've not ever had a problem that was caused by a controller or a control instruction. It's just somebody is, land a little bit too hot and run off into the grass and hit a runway light or something, or a ground loop, or the wind. I mean, it's not always pilot error, but in all the time that we've run Oshkosh, it's not been from a control instruction. So it's very, very safe.
There are tons of reasons why people bring their aircraft to an event like AirVenture. Some people will come in to see the air show for a day. Others will park their planes at the airport and stay at a hotel. But a lot of people do like Curtis and fly into AirVenture, camp under their wing, and experience everything the event has to offer.
If you're already the kind of person who likes to experience the world around you with a tent, an airplane can add a whole new dimension to your ability to explore. There's really camping to fit every person's taste, whether you want to come to a major fly-in like this and camp with the hundreds of your friends around you, or disappear by yourself into a backcountry mountain strip. At AirVenture, every year I've come, I've been able to camp, and it's my favorite way to experience the fly-in. People who stay at hotels really don't understand what they're missing. Waking up in the morning to the sun coming up over the horizon and looking out the tent and all you can see is airplanes as far as you can see is a great way to appreciate the camping experience. Another thing that's wonderful about camping at AirVenture is you don't need to worry about bringing all the food and water that you might require. There's restaurants to go to, bars at night, and breakfast to be had in the morning. All you really need to camp at a place like this is a tent, a sleeping bag, and an air mattress to get up off the ground.
Fly-ins like AirVenture provide many creature comforts to campers, like bathrooms and showers. For someone flying into a small strip in the middle of nowhere, these things may be hard to find. The other attraction to camping at a big fly-in event is, of course, the social side. If you're camping with a few thousand other aircraft owners, you can be sure you're going to have at least one thing in common.
One of the great parts about camping at a fly-in is you tend to meet all kinds of people who share a similar interest. Matt and Bill, did you guys know each other when you showed up at Oshkosh this year?
Nope, we just met on Friday when we both flew in. So he's next door to me, and we started talking. He's from Canada, I'm from Atlanta. So, you know, we just had that common bond of flying in and camping together, so.
At something like AirVenture, it's also very likely that you'll find people with the same aircraft as you. Curtis's 195 is not a very common aircraft, unless you're at AirVenture. And with so many different communities coming together, there's always going to be something to do. Whether it's workshops or forums that are a part of the show, or getting together with other campers when the gates close.
Now, the public comes to the show and they're here during the day. What happens when the gates close in the evening and it's kind of those of us left camping here?
Well, most people come back after the show and sit down and put their feet up, and
That's when the party starts.
that's when the party starts.
And that's part of the fun.
It's part of the fun. It's a tame crowd. I mean, we're not, you know, it's not exactly Woodstock, but we like to have a beer and meet, you know, new people. And there's a lot of groups that flew in together. The Mooney group flew in, the Cessna group flew in. We've got the Piper group. They finally did their second attempt. They finally made it their first year, and they were parked right over here by me. You walk up to them, and they were just open arms to meet you and talk about, you know, your flying experiences and what they've done. And a lot of them have known each other, and then, you know, they'll introduce you to their friends. So you just start meeting people.
Now, camping existed long before airplanes, and people without planes go camping and may even go to events like AirVenture.
So now, how does camping with an airplane compare to camping with like an SUV or backpacking?
Well, I found the plane, you know, it definitely gets you there faster. You can leave on a Friday after work and you can be somewhere a couple hours later and sit down and have dinner. I think what's really great about it is you do two things you love. You fly and then you're doing something outdoors. So I found that most of the time I'm up in the plane, it's just very relaxing and kind of a therapeutic experience.
Of course, with camping, you're at the mercy of the elements. Rain happens, and if you want a comfortable camping experience, you have to prepare for that.
Well, the weather's not always perfect in paradise, and one of the things I prefer about camping with my airplane versus camping with my car is my airplane comes with a built-in canopy. And in the age-old debate about high wing versus low wing, I'd rather be walking around dry underneath my high wing than crawling around dry underneath my low wing. And just like any form of camping, it's always important to travel with good quality gear. One of the pieces of gear that's new when you go camping with your aircraft are tie-downs like these. That way, if a thunderstorm blows up, the wind won't take your aircraft flying without you in it. Well, it rained pretty hard here last night, but we did just fine. We've got a good quality tent that demonstrated that it's waterproof. We've got air mattresses to keep us up off the damp and cold ground and sleeping bags to keep us warm. Even though it's summertime, it's always important to travel with some warm gear.
Camping isn't going to be for everyone, but for thousands of pilots at Oshkosh, it's the only way to enjoy the fly-in.
So if somebody was sitting here watching us today and they've enjoyed this flying but they've stayed at a hotel, what would you say to encourage them to come spend some time in the campground with you guys?
Well, I would say come out if you don't have your plane and just meet us and get to know the pilots. I think more people here are just willing to introduce people to aviation. Really just come in and sit down and get to know what it's all about, the whole experience.
For more information on today's segments, visit www.theaviators.tv. From our official home at the Whitman Regional Airport in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, we'll see you next time on The Aviators.